This is Andrew Rochford, host of the Rochford Files here on YouTube and also additional streams on Twitch as well. And for this video, I'm going to get into this fallout in the debate between punching Nazis and deradicalization that happened in the recent episode of the Bad Faith podcast hosted by Briahna Joy Gray, as she had guest on Talia Lavin to discuss this issue. And before I get into it, I'm just going to say right now that when I go into these topics, I do it to discuss real issues at hand. I'm not doing this to weigh in on drama like the Vanguard or the Progressive Voice. I do it when there's real issues at hand that need to be discussed, or when additional perspective needs to be added to them, not just for the sake of stepping in and getting involved in drama. And this is one of those issues where I feel like I have something different to add to the conversation. But first, I'm going to start off with a couple clips from this segment in Bad Faith podcast. Otherwise, if I went through the whole 24-minute thing, this would probably end up being like a 25 to 50-minute video, and I'd rather this not take that long. So let's get into the clips.
Listen, like I don't think that I'm going to be able to convince you. I think if you want to like hold hands with a Nazi and kiss them gently on the cheek, that's fine. I just don't think that's going to work out well for you.
Do you think that what I'm arguing for is that I Briahna Joy Gray, who was sitting before you as a black woman, wants to hold hands with Nazis and kiss them in the street? I'm not trying to debate you at all here. I'm trying to explore what I think are some tensions that I too am wrestling with. And I would hope that since we're both members of this group, of these groups, that certainly see no benefit in appeasing Nazis, that we can have a conversation that doesn't presume that where we're coming from is because of some natural sympathy with these groups, as opposed to genuinely trying to strategize about how to fix this problem that we very much agree on, which is that America is being increasingly radicalized in these extremist ways.
I feel like I've stated my position repeatedly, and then I don't quite know how to react other than to respond other than no, I really believe what I believe. Like I really think that stigmatization, that pariah dumb, that physical confrontation, that I think people think that they're too cool for anti-fascism. People think anti-fascism is lame. People think that it's gauche. It's not enough. Yes, of course I believe that we should have Medicare for all, that we should have social safety net policies, that we shouldn't leave people to be deprived, alone, to feel these senses of loss. The elements of vulnerability to radicalization are very common human emotions. Is feeling lost, is feeling lonely, is feeling purposeless, and everything we can do to mitigate those feelings in such large masses of the population, that's great. I think there are many constructive things you can do to fight Nazism that don't involve brass knuckling up and just flattening the nose of a Proud Boy. But I think you have to be willing to brass knuckle up and flatten the nose of a Proud Boy too.
Let's address those first. A couple points from that video, then I'll play that short little clip at the very end. And let's just start off with the fact that Talia Lavin is you breaking out the same type of straw man that multiple people have on Briahna Joy Gray since the beginning of this year when it comes to this whole Nazi issue. Like, they used it on her when, after the fallout from the Magnus Pamvidia Jimmy Dore interview, and a couple other times, including just this interview, and how gross it was of her to make that accusation that Briahna Joy Gray would want to hold hands with Nazis and kiss them in the streets. Seriously, all because she's not prioritizing Nazis, Proud Boys as the highest threat. Because my thoughts are, when it comes to this argument, it's the politicians. That's where my focus is. They're the white supremacists in suits, and those are the people who have the power. And when it comes to the Nazis, Proud Boys, their only power is with violence. And unfortunately, the systems that the politicians uphold, especially with the police state, often give those people a bit of extra strength. But still, my focus is squarely, first off, it's going to be on politicians up at the top. And the fact, and with de-radicalization, I think what we've seen is, I think it can win the margins battle, but it's definitely not something as a primary strategy to work with. But the other problem here is people who have this line of thinking, like Talia Lavin. The problem is they go from using that as an excuse to not talk to anyone that they perceive is right wing. And as Black people have said, such as Nick from Fred Hampton Leftist, that you're not helping them if with your moral grandstanding of, oh, I don't talk to Nazis, because there's a big gap between your average conservative Republican voter and those people who actually represent those white supremacy groups. And there's plenty of evidence that people who have said that they organized on the Bernie Sanders campaign and knocked on doors said they've had some moderate success talking to conservatives about these issues, such as Medicare for All and other class issues. And those are conversations at that level that we shouldn't be running away from if the opportunity presents itself. Just because I said that, though, don't take that as me being big into the idea of de-radicalization, because I realize that if you put too much focus into the de-radicalization versus what the main focus should be in building this broad multiracial coalition, is trying to get the non-voters engaged with what you're trying to do here. And that's why I'm not going to completely disregard making attempts to do it, it's not going to be something that is a priority when in reality, in this country, we have at least 33%, if not more, people, if you just base it on people who just don't vote, as people that we need to get engaged in direct action and building a mutual aid system to challenge this two-party oligarchy. And it's not going to help. And when you fall into the line of Talia Lavin's thinking, then you get to where it's pretty much just liberal shit, to be honest. When you get more focused on trying to defeat those groups rather than the people, politicians who actually have the power to delegitimize them. So before I get further into what I'm trying to say here, let's play that last clip of Talia Lavin ending this interview.
What are you talking about?
Well,
I think actually I'm going to end this conversation. Just like, I'm not trying to prove my racial bona fides. I'm a genuinely fucking angry person. I'm very fucking angry at Nazis. I don't have any patience for them. And you may be a lovely saint who's willing to spend all day for the rest of your life engaged in conversations with people who want to kill you. I am not.
But Talia, you literally did. You did do that. Like you chose to put. I'm not saying it's like you're.
I'm sorry, but Briahna, I hope that you have a lovely day. I'm going to end this conversation now. Bye.
I obviously wish that didn't go that way. And
what are you talking about?
Well,
I think.
So that instance right there was one in plenty of where Briahna Joy Gray just lightly challenged this strategy where you just put all your focus into attacking these far-right extremist groups as opposed to what I believe Briahna Joy Gray is really focused on more is actually challenging politicians. And while I say that's a liberal type of focus, it's because when they see anti-fascist fighting these groups, what does it really do? Have you improved living conditions for people? Not very many. Only to the people who may feel physically threatened by these groups, but on a large scale, just trying to focus your attacks on that isn't it. And let's go back to another point where Talia thinks that people are too good for anti-fascism. But when you look at most of the people who are coming at Briahna Joy Gray right now because they think to justify her victimhood from being lightly challenged in this interview, those are people who, by and large, aren't gonna challenge fascism. Because if you're still voting for the Democratic Party, you're emboldening fascism. And what I notice is if you're feeling like Briahna Joy Gray disrespected her, you probably fall right under that group. And the difference really comes down to this. I don't think you can fight fascism within the two-party system. I also don't think you really eradicate fascism if you neglect politicians and shift your focus to beating up Nazis. See, you could kill all the Nazis in this country right now, but think about this. The fascist, authoritative, oppressive police state's going to exist. You're still going to be considered domestic violent extremist. So there's still going to be a military industrial complex. Committing violence on black and brown people internationally. So this battle really doesn't challenge imperialism. It doesn't do anything to get us to socialism, communism. So that's why I don't believe that's the way to fight fascism. I believe the way we fight fascism is by completely disengaging from the two-party system and building power outside of it. So to me, this is like being a wrestler who's trying to challenge for someone with the championship. And to me, that's what the politicians are, the title holders here. And the far-right extremist groups, in my opinion, they're like the distraction, diversion, that storyline type thing that is like a roadblock or an obstacle to getting to that goal of the title. So when I go into this, you could be in. Does that mean that when you try to build power to challenge politicians, the ones who actually hold far more power, significantly more, that these white extremists aren't going to try to interfere along the way? No, by no means. I'm not saying that whatsoever. So, but if they don't get in the way, then I'm going to go after the person who's far more powerful. But if they decide to get involved, then that's when we defend ourselves. Not when we losing focus from the true power structure of white supremacy in the United States. Let's get into probably the main fallout threads from both Talia, Lavin, and Briahna Joy Gray before I drop some final points to end this. So here's a thread from her. So now, when she made that gross accusation about Nazis, Talia said, I mean, kinda. Then made 4 points. Briahna Joy Gray did not say this would be a convo about de-radicalization. I wouldn't have agreed to it. I asked her to change the subject many times. I also asked her to not publish it. Fuck you for saying my anger at Nazis that have targeted my family is performative. I am beyond furious at this disingenuous presentation, these glib clips, and frankly a facetious ill-informed, damaging Trojan horse an interview. I deeply regret doing it, not because I'm ashamed of what I said, because it was premised on false comedy and lies. And she takes someone who, statement she likes in Molly Conger. If there's someone in your life that you've lost to a hate movement, it is possible to bring them back from that on a societal level. Focusing on the Derad as the primary tool to fight hate is like bailing out a flooded basement with a teacup while the storm still rages outside. I'm not accusing you of shit beyond being a kind of big old jerk. Anyway, what to say about this point beyond the next time I try to quit smoking no podcast? There's 288 pages of my thoughts on the rise of US fascism and how to fight it here. Okay, I'm gonna go right into those main points. To me, number one, the thing with podcast is you may say a few topics that you like to discuss when it comes to what you have planned, but there's plenty of situations where you get into plenty of unplanned conversations. Next, I watched at least that full 24-minute clip in the process of where Talia melted down over the lightest of criticism, challenging her point, which is mainly based on destroy Nazis. Not one point did I hear her explicitly state to change that subject. And Briahna Joy Gray is also going to made in her thread, she disputes point number 3 and another weird interpretation for her 4th point, because not at one point did I think Briahna Joy Gray ever say that her outrage is performative. Because to me, I say it based on my focus, it's like a diversion from the main goal if you let your focus be based in that. And it's just like if it could apply to many other scenarios where incidents in your life can alter your political ideology. And I'm not going to say that her viewpoint is performative. I just think it's misguided and misdirected when it comes to challenging power in the United States. So let's get into Briahna Joy Gray's main thread on her response back. I hope to not do this because I sincerely appreciate that you agree to be a guest on Bad Faith. However, it was not a convo about deradicalization, a term you introduced after I asked a question about how your reporting affected your view on coalition building on the left. 2. I offered you a chance to talk about whatever you thought the main takeaways of the book were. I asked germane follow-up questions. 3. We agreed to record the podcast at 1 p.m. on Friday. You kept my producer and I waiting about an hour, then you showed up in a car on your phone. You ignored the detailed technical instructions and were not in a position to conduct a quality professional recording. I said nothing about this, but simply offered to reschedule at a time that was better for you. We agreed on Sunday that I left no time to record a backup. You didn't ask me to not publish it. You told me you weren't going to provide your audio, perhaps assuming that we couldn't publish without it. We had the Zoom meeting. I offered you an opportunity to come back and record a coda She walked off the interview. I sincerely wanted you to have a chance to finish the conversation on a better note. You declined to take me up on the offer. The podcast speaks for itself. I wish you nothing but the best. I won't stoop so low to reveal our private correspondence, but I will note she admitted the end of my remarks to her. I meant what I said. I have genuine positive feelings about Talia and will continue to manifest that positivity in the public sphere. And that message she left off. We obviously appreciate your audio recording, but I understand you're feeling frustrated and don't want to hand it over. That is your right. We need to air a Monday episode, so we will be airing this. Had we recorded Friday, we might have been able to come up with something else, but regrettably, now we're up against a deadline. If you want to hop back on and finish the conversation, I'd be more than happy to do so, but it's obviously up to you. Alright, so that to me says that Talia was uncomfortable in that moment having a private conversation, and she just wanted to straw man Briahna Joy Gray into being a Nazi sympathizer when, to me, that is not true. She just doesn't believe in your idea that Nazi punching is the way to go to defeat fascism. And now a lot of the fallout includes Briahna Joy Gray being called a grifter and doing this to boost the Bad Faith podcast. But come on. If you are really a grifter, she wouldn't be traveling all over the country to do things like try to help Nina Turner get elected and also speak out against the recall of Kshama Sawant that in Seattle. If she were really a grifter, she would be sitting comfy at her desk in her apartment like so many of these other synthetic lefties like to do, and not get involved in any type of organizing efforts, regardless of the success of them. And at the same time, those people always like to tear down organizing efforts as well. But Briahna Joy Gray, she tries to uplift those, even if they're not going to be successful the first few times, because sometimes movements start small, then they grow over time. And I've made that point many times over these new movements that are trying to get organized under the Biden administration. So, to sum this up, I think that at the end of the day, for me, in this debate of deradicalization over Nazi punching, I'm going to choose putting a light effort to de-radicalize, but my main focus is going to be on building the coalition with non-voters and disenfranchised people first. Then next, we go challenge politicians in power. But if Nazis get in the way, that's when we defend ourselves from them. Not before that, because politicians just want to. The more that politicians continue to see the people fight each other, that just asserts the likelihood that you're never going to defeat their power structure.